We are live. It is a Thursday. This is the Rich Lieberman Media Pulse. And look, this isn't anything official, but it is being widely, and I do mean widely, discussed at the KCBS radio newsroom and beyond. Now, what am I talking about? Well, it's something that has been frankly taking place the last several years. Now, I'm not going to give you an actual timetable, but that's why I said several years. Let's put it this way, at least 5 to 7 years. And what am I talking about again? Well, if you are in the Bay Area, and even if you're not, because you can listen to any radio station, well, virtually any radio station, by an app, a an accelerant to where you can listen to the station, whether through the app or through your own computer, et cetera, et cetera. KCBS is engulfed in this kind of internal strife with regards to a hiring practice. Now, it's not official. It's just the manner in which certain people, certain ethnicities, no. A gender situation, yes. There is an inordinate amount of women. Now, I have nothing against this, nothing at all. To me, doesn't matter your orientation, your gender, your race, etc., etc. And I realize that this kind of a feeling is somewhat naive because this is the story of virtually all hiring practices these days. But when it goes overboard and when it becomes a source of consternation and frustration and downright fear, then you got a problem. And I have heard from various contacts and various people that at KCBS, men, there are not many men reporters. Once again, let me emphasize, let me underline. I'm hearing that there's a vibe, that there is this fear factor that's taking place. A lot of the personnel at KCBS consist mostly of women, and they're mostly white women. Not a lot of men. In fact, not a lot of, for that matter, not a lot of, shall we say, and this is what bothers me too. Doesn't have to be a black guy, doesn't have to be an Asian guy. It's talent first and foremost, but that's not the gist of this. There are two traffic anchors. On morning drive, there's one. Afternoon drive, there's one. One of whom I think the world of. In the afternoon, Kim Vestal happens to be white, but she's good. In the morning, I'm not so crazy about this woman. She's very talented. Of course she is. But she also happens to be white. There is part of the core, the two in the morning drive, another white woman. Midday anchor, another woman who happens to be Asian. And then there's a whole lot of women reporters and weekend anchors and overnight anchors who are women. Not a lot of men. Let me triple say this again, because we have people that like to pick and choose, cherry pick their own opinions, and then like to go on from that and make the argument that benefits their argument. My situation in an ideal world is that you pick, you choose, you hire based upon talent. Okay? I know that's naive. I know it's from yesterday and yesterday and yesterday, but that's my opinion. But when you go out of your way management, KCBS, Odyssey, to only pick a certain woman, in this case, a white woman. And when the majority of your personnel at KCBS is of white women, and a lot of those not frankly qualified, in my opinion, and when you have the angst shared by a lot of the people who are working there, of course, none of them wanted to go on the record because they're fearful. They're fearful. They don't want to rock the boat. But let's just put it this way. There is an inordinate amount of women personnel. There's, God, at least 10 women reporters, not many men. And this has been going on for several years. Well, who does the hiring at KCBS? Well, it's a collective effort. It's mostly Jenny Seelig, good old Jenny Seelig, and a guy who's in charge of the traffic hires and the sports guy hires. By the way, the sports guy is a guy. Oh boy, talk about token hires. But in any event, his name is Don Bastida. Now, most of the people there like Don Bastida, including the women. Not so much the case with the very, very few men that are there at KCBS, because they see themselves very, very, very minority, of course. Just off the top of my head, you have a guy named Jack Ferris, a reporter, white guy. You have Matt Bigler, longtime veteran reporter, anchor. Okay. You have Brian Goebel, and a nighttime anchor. That's about it. Then you have a guy named an anchor on the weekend overnight named Peter Finch. There's one other person who I'm leaving out, a reporter. Somebody will know and they'll identify him and all that. That's about it. But you have an overwhelming amount of women. Now, look, women, I've got nothing against. They may have something against me from years past. But I am not anti-women. I am not anti-black. I am not anti-gay. I am not anti-whomever. You qualify, you apply, or you apply if you are qualified, if you do a good job. But I realize the realities of the world in which we live in. But when it becomes almost intimidating and you're fearful, not me, but the personnel that's already there, when they fear their job and when they can just as easily be told to go bye-bye and sayonara, and they hire another person who happens to be a woman, well, then you got problems and you've got issues. Now, for the record, KCBS, which is a monopoly, which had a decent August book, the ratings went up. Keep in mind, they don't compete against anybody, does KCBS. They are a monopoly, AM and FM, for news. Therefore, when they do well, they should do well because nobody is competing against them. So they're always going to use that as to say, look, what we're doing is working. So you want to challenge us on our hiring practice? Go ahead. Well, I wouldn't be doing that. I could just talk about it because it's existent. It is out there. And of course, the people that work there, they know it. I've known it before some of their personnel has told me. If you're a normal manager there, whether it's the news or sports or personnel or vice president, what have you, you'd call a meeting, you put out a memo, or more than likely a meeting. And you'd say something to the effect of, well, look, we're hiring, we're doing the best job that we can. We know all of you are hard workers. We don't look at a person's sexual orientation or their gender or their religion or their race, something like that. I'm just using this as an example. But for the last few years, I mentioned 5 to 7 at least, there have been a number of personnel decisions that have been curiously only white and women. And when that becomes a distraction, and when that policy gets a lot of eyes and ears open with a lot of curiosity and skepticism about the unofficial, not the official, but the unofficial policy, it's pretty evident and clear just what is taking place. Selig, I'm just speculating. Now, she could say, well, I've hired plenty of men. Some didn't work out. Some are still there. Some turned down jobs that were offered to them, which was the case with Brian Goebel. From several contacts, he was offered a prime time, full time actually, gig to anchor, and he turned it down. He likes the schedule that he has. He likes to be independent. That being said, that was not the norm. That was the outside thing. The fact of the matter is, folks, the people at KCBS who will listen to this and get this secondhand, what have you, they know what I'm talking about. Because some of them, they themselves, have contacted me and begged me not to ID them, which is good because I don't know who they are anyway, but I've found out that the information that they have provided me is sincere and it is pertinent and it is quite evident and truthful. I have been saying the same thing indirectly for the past 5 to 7 years. That doesn't mean said people have to go out and now start hiring a whole bunch of men or white men or black men or Chinese, what have you. It's just that when you go out of your way to hire only those that you have a certain pecking order, then you got a problem. And when the people that are there, some of whom have said, enough of this. We're a little fed up. We're fearful. Why are they fearful? Has nothing to do with their job. Has to do with a prevailing feeling and a wisdom that may or may not be true. But when the current hiring practice is what it is, then once again, you have a problem. And the matter to sort of put this all aside, if indeed it's an issue, which apparently it is, normal, competent, even less than competent, mediocre managers would have a little quasi meeting, unofficial. And they'd say, like I just said a few minutes ago, everybody here is welcome to tell their friends to apply, or we're an equal opportunity hiring organization, that kind of a thing. The normal stuff that you see when applying for a job, no less at a public radio station. So, where does it go from here? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, there is genuine angst and concern. Some have said an individual who applied for a job there recently, who didn't fit the gender situation, who didn't fit the fact that he was Asian or black or Hispanic, well, he was turned down. Wait a minute, strike that. He didn't even get a response. And it's been over a couple of months now. So go figure. Anyway, please subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. I will be broadcasting later a sort of a tour de force on Thursday night for you YouTubers, and we will see you later. Thanks for watching.